It started with a whisper. I never should have said yes to house sitting for my boss. Don't get me wrong, the house was incredible. It looked like something straight out of a period drama. 3 sprawling stories, wide bay windows, an immaculately landscaped garden. Inside, it was just as grand. Mahogany staircases, oil paintings in gilded frames, and shelves filled with books that looked old enough to crumble if you touched them. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt watched. I know it sounds dramatic, but I couldn't shake the sensation. It wasn't just the size of the place or the eerie stillness that came with being alone. It was something else, something I couldn't name. A subtle weight in the air, like the house had been waiting for someone to fill the silence. The job seemed easy enough. My boss was heading to Europe for a week with his wife, and all I had to do was take care of the basics, feed their cat, water the plants, and keep an eye on things. It sounded like a sweet deal, a week away from my cramped apartment, lounging in a mansion with no one to bother me. If only I'd known. The first night was uneventful. At first, I spent the evening exploring the house, marveling at its grandeur. I found a library filled with leather-bound books, a sitting room with a grand piano, and even a hidden staircase that led to a narrow attic packed with old trunks and forgotten relics. By the time the sun set, I was curled up on the couch in the living room, the cat, Mittens, purring at my feet. I'd put on a classic horror movie to set the mood, laughing at myself for being such a cliché. It was just past midnight when I heard it. At first, I thought it was the wind, a faint, breathy sound, almost imperceptible over the low hum of the refrigerator. But as I turned down the volume on the TV, I realized it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the basement. The sound was rhythmic, like someone whispering a chant over and over. I paused the movie, straining to hear. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was unmistakable. Low, insistent, and wrong. I stood up, my heart pounding. Slowly, I made my way toward the basement door, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. As I got closer, the whispering grew louder, and then, clear as day, I heard it. My name. Come closer, it said. I froze. My pulse was hammering in my ears, but I couldn't move. My name echoed again, softer this time, almost pleading. I took a step back, then another, until I was halfway across the kitchen. Finally, I turned and bolted upstairs, locking myself in the guest bedroom. I told myself it was just my imagination, the product of too many horror movies and an unfamiliar house. But that night, I barely slept. When morning came, I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the house felt warm and inviting again. It was easy to dismiss the events of the previous night as a trick of the mind. That illusion shattered when I walked into the kitchen. There were footprints on the floor, wet, smeared prints that trailed from the basement door to the refrigerator. They were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Too long, with too many toes, and oddly misshapen, as if they'd been made by something crawling instead of walking. I stared at them, my stomach churning. Mittens hissed from the corner, her fur bristling as she glared at the basement door. I cleaned up the prints, scrubbing the floor until it gleamed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The whispers started earlier that night, just as the sun dipped below the horizon. This time, they weren't confined to the basement. Wherever I went in the house, I could hear them, soft, rhythmic, and impossibly close. By midnight, the whispers had grown louder, more insistent. I tried to drown them out with music, but even with my headphones on, I could still hear them, as if they were coming from inside my head. Mittens was on edge, darting from room to room with her tail puffed up. When she finally stopped, it was in front of the basement door. She crouched low, growling, a sound I didn't think a cat could make. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, echoing from behind the basement door. I stared at the door, frozen in place. The knocks came again, louder this time. I wanted to run, to get in my car and drive as far away as possible, but something held me there. Call it fear, call it curiosity, but I couldn't leave, not yet. The next day, I decided to explore the house more thoroughly. If I was going to survive the rest of the week, I needed answers. In the attic, I found an old trunk filled with faded photographs and yellowed papers. Among them was a journal, its leather cover cracked and worn. The entries were written in a neat, old-fashioned script, detailing the life of a man named Edwin Whitmore, the original owner of the house. At first, the journal seemed harmless. Edwin wrote about his family, his work as a merchant, and the joys of building his dream home. But as I flipped through the pages, the tone shifted. The final entries were frantic, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "They speak to me in the night," one entry read. "Voices from the dark, they know my name." Another entry described strange figures appearing in the windows, their hollow eyes watching him as he slept. The last entry sent a chill down my spine. "I have sealed them below," it read. "May they never escape." That night, I made my decision. I couldn't ignore the basement any longer. With the journal tucked under my arm and a flashlight in hand, I unlocked the basement door and stepped inside. The air was freezing, and the smell of damp earth filled my nose. The stairs groaned under my weight as I descended, each step echoing in the darkness. At the bottom, the beam of my flashlight illuminated a vast, empty space. The walls were lined with shelves holding jars of preserved something. At the far end of the room, I saw a door, rusted, ancient, and covered in strange symbols. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices urging me forward. "You're finally here," one voice said, louder than the rest. "We've been waiting." I reached for the door, my hand trembling. But before I could touch it, the floor beneath me shifted. Something was moving. I turned the flashlight downward and froze. The footprints were back, wet, slimy, and leading directly toward me. I barely had time to scream before the hands grabbed me. Cold, clammy hands wrapped around my ankles, dragging me backward. I thrashed, kicking and clawing, but there was nothing there. I don't remember how I got out. One moment, I was in the basement, and the next, I was standing on the front lawn, staring up at the house. Every window was lit, and in each one, I saw them, dozens of figures, their hollow eyes watching me. I quit my job the next day. My boss never asked why, but even now, weeks later, I can't escape it. The whispers follow me wherever I go, soft and persistent. And every time I close my eyes, I see them. The figures in the windows, waiting. And I wonder, did I leave the house? Or did the house leave with me?